Show me all the blueprints. Show me all the blueprints. Show me all the blueprints. Show me all the
Howard.
blueprints. Show me all the 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 blueprints. Show me all the
Welcome
blueprints.
to You'll Probably Agree. I'm with Ian Simmons, or what the fuck? Ian Simmons from KickingTheSeat.com. And today we're talking about what it feels like to be stuck in quarantine with The Aviator, a movie where at the time we laughed at Howard Hughes's disease, and now we're like, oh, I see you're a man of taste. So, having said that, interesting film to revisit. It certainly is something that is relevant today. I just kept thinking of that scene where he goes into the bathroom. There's two scenes like that. I think it was the one where he washes his hands so much that he cuts it and it's bleeding.
Mm-hmm.
And now when I wash my hands these days, I'm basically at that point. And I don't know what it is with guys named Howard, but we got Howard Hughes, Howie Mandel, like all germaphobes.
Howard the Duck.
Howard the Duck, yeah. I mean, he took a bath with that one duck that had like the duck titties in Howard the Duck.
Well, in fairness, he was just flying through her house, not unlike Howard Hughes in that plane.
Yeah,
as we see. Yeah. I like to think of that as Spielberg's homage to Howard Hughes.
Yeah. I think Lucas and Spielberg produced that. Oh boy, God. There was a lot of directors attached to The Aviator. I think Spielberg at one point was interested in directing The Aviator, and I think by the 10th director was Christopher Nolan, who wanted to do an adaptation with Jim Carrey, but they didn't secure the rights to film it in time before this film went into production.
Wow.
That would have been really interesting. Jim Carrey and Christopher Nolan. I'm just trying to picture what that would be.
I don't know. And I don't know that I would have wanted to see it outside of being a fascination. Because there's something about the combination of DiCaprio and Scorsese that I think just makes this the perfect version of this story.
Yeah, absolutely. You have two people who've worked together before on Gangs in New York. Subsequently, they worked together on 2 to 3 other films. 3 other films, actually.
Yeah, it was Wolf of Wall Street, The Departed.
Mm-hmm.
What else am I missing?
Shutter Island.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Wolf of Wall Street, Departed, Shutter Island. I think, yeah, that was the 3 others. They were the perfect marriage of actor and director to sort of bring together a story about a man who's passionate about aviation and passionate about filmmaking. In terms of how time moves forward in that movie, it was pretty confusing because until I read up a little on Howard Hughes, I only knew sort of the basics from this film because when I saw it, it was in 2004. That's when I was in high school and I reached my Martin Scorsese level of obsession where all of his work I had to see. When I was a kid, I didn't care that much for it. When I was older, I was infatuated by it. I was absolutely floored by Raging Bull. It was my favorite film of all time. It's still one of my favorite films. I can't rank a favorite film amongst all films. I guess if you put a gun on to my head, it would be Space Odyssey. But Raging Bull would be a close second. There's a lot of reasons for that that I could get into. With The Aviator, I truly appreciated how you understood the passion of Howard Hughes, how it depicted his OCD, and having a sister with OCD. It's pretty close to the real thing. She doesn't piss in milk jars and walk around in a room naked and put herself in quarantine. She'll do stuff like tapping something enough times because if you don't tap, everyone will die or something crazy like that. So this movie kind of captured what it's like to constantly go over that repeated thought in your head. You know, whether he's constantly saying, "Show me all the blueprints, show me all blueprints, show me all blueprints," or he say "the way, the future," or anything else. It really kind of gets into that mindset. What was your experience? Did you watch the movie again, or have you seen it like so much? It's like you kind of knew it by heart.
Well, I've seen it twice. I
Yeah.
saw it when it first came out, and then I watched it. I just finished like 20 minutes before jumping on here, because it's 3 hours long. I gotta divvy up my time.
It's a long one, yeah.
You know, my experience with The Aviator is kind of unique because when I first saw it, I think I loved it, but I was in such a weird headspace. It was my wife and I's anniversary. This is December of 2004. And we decided to go to a movie like we always did, except that I don't remember the context of it, but I had some kind of a nervous breakdown at my job. And that afternoon, I left early from work. She picked me up and we drove to, I don't think it was a doctor. It might have been some kind of a hospital situation. Somebody checked me out and basically said, "You're under way too much stress. You're not sleeping." And I don't remember if they even gave me anything. They just kind of sent us on our way. And I was like, the act of getting treatment kind of calmed me down. So we went right to see The Aviator, a nice, relaxing movie that is not in any way connected to mental health issues. But no, it's just I appreciated the genius of Scorsese and DiCaprio's performance. But watching it last night and today, I don't know why I haven't watched this movie more over the years, because I think it's one of my favorite Scorsese pictures. It really, he does like to do profiles of, troubled young men, but I think this is one that speaks to one of the most complex people he's ever tackled. And I think it explores a lot about filmmaking, about film history, about mental illness, about politics. That entire third act showdown between DiCaprio and Alan Alda as a crooked senator. I mean, it's beautiful stuff, and you can almost make an entire film out of that. So yeah, high marks for me for The Aviator. I had forgotten how complex it was, and it was really nice to go back and look at it today, especially because I've been kind of obsessed with Cate Blanchett lately.
Mm-hmm.
I revisited The Gift a month or two ago, and her Katharine Hepburn in this movie, I think that's the one thing I didn't respond to back in 2004, is because I think particularly that opening scene where she does seem to be doing almost the Bugs Bunny impression of Katharine Hepburn. I was like, oh, that's all she's doing. But watching it again, I'm like, no, there's lots of layers to that performance. Part of it is that kind of cartoonish public Hollywood movie star persona, and then part of it is just the way she navigates the world. It's beautiful stuff. And I nothing against Kate Beckinsale, but the when Cate Blanchett exits the picture, my heart kind of sank.
Well, Blanchett did win an Oscar for that performance, and I had the same feeling when I first saw her Katharine Hepburn sort of impression, because it felt very much like someone doing an impression in that film. But I guess that was sort of because the first scene we see her in, I believe she was playing golf with Howard Hughes.
Sort of. It's the scene where he lands and goes to pick her up to play golf. And I don't think I think she might just say like hi or something like that, but we don't really get to see her until like a couple minutes later. It's nitpicking.
Right. I just remember they had the golf scene, and she's so over the top, and I'm thinking, how did she win the Oscar for this? Like, I get that Katharine Hepburn sounded like that, but it almost felt like she was putting on this big sort of cartoonish performance. But as the movie evolves, you realize, oh, she kind of was putting on a performance in that particular instance. And then when you see sort of more of how she really is, she kind of doesn't know whether she's acting or not, as Hughes points out to Hepburn later on in the picture during their breakup scene. Which the cinematography in the movie I love. Although it was weird during the golfing scene, I was wondering why the grass was blue in that scene. I wonder if that was an odd choice in the color grading. or Christopher Nolan came in and, he's red-green colorblind. And he's just like, I was supposed to make this picture. I'm trying to do an English accent. I can't. Make it blue. Why? I don't know.
No, that's Michael Caine representing Christopher Nolan on the film.
I want you to make it blue, okay? Make it blue and make it work.
By the way, side note: have you ever seen Michael Winterbottom's The Trip?
No.
It's available on Hulu if you have that. It's Steve Coogan and Rob Brydon as two going on a road trip, and they're constantly trying to out-actor each other by doing impressions.
Yeah. Throughout
the film, they riff on Michael Caine. It's really funny. So yeah, sidebar.
I trusted you. You found me. I'm very emotional. Michael Caine. Yes.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah.
But no, that blue grass also shows up later when he crashes the big plane, the test plane in the beat field.
Yes.
And that I didn't notice it so much in the golf scene, but yeah, that beat field scene, I was like, yeah, this is almost like the Land of Oz or something. It's really technicolor in your face, and it feels like it's trying to make a statement, but I don't know about what.
Yeah, maybe about how the world is off kilter for Hughes in a way. I know it won the Oscar for Best Cinematography, and one scene in particular that I love is when Katharine Hepburn and Howard Hughes are breaking up. There's this huge amount of light that's spilled on Hughes, where it's almost like he's in his own personal quarantine. And he's cut off from everyone else, yet Hepburn is normally lit in that scene. And then later in the film, when DiCaprio, or I should say Howard Hughes, really is in his own personal hell, the lighting on him is full-fledged. Everything is completely red. It's sort of an homage back to that scene, especially when Hepburn is talking to Howard Hughes through the door of his personal screening room that he's in, where he's butt naked. The both of them are completely lit in red, sort of echoing back to that scene where he was beginning to enter his own personal hell. Whenever something in his life would happen that was alarming or troubling, something he couldn't control, something that upset him, there was a large amount of light projected onto him, and he would go a little further and a little further down to that road of insanity. So that was like a little detail I noticed that really stood out to me with Robert Richardson's cinematography that I just thought was fantastic. Something I didn't notice when I first saw the movie.
Yeah, and there's I think this is in the trailer. There's also that scene where he's in the car gripping the steering wheel, and there's all the sparks going off, and yeah, you get these giant sweeps of light all over his face, almost like drowning him out. Yeah, I agree. It's really haunting stuff. And I like that. I can't think of other movies about mental illness that portray it quite like this. They don't get overly explainy about what's going on. There's no scene with the doctor saying, oh, well, he was younger. He went through this tragedy with his mother and she was crazy or whatever. But also it doesn't have a nice little happy ending where he gets treatment and we figure, oh, everything's going to be okay. There's a nice fake out that Scorsese executes with, I assume, John Logan, the screenwriter, where after they get the spruce goose off the ground and it's airborne that comes back down, proving that you can have a 200-ton wooden plane with a wingspan the size of a football field take off and land safely. Hughes is like making plans to innovate jet technology. He's kissing Ava Gardner and sending her away, and everything seems fine until you get that one glimpse of a guy, some kind of a porter across the hangar with the white gloves, and he's like, does that guy work for me? And then you get the really creepy delivery by John C. Reilly. Everybody works for you, Mr. Hughes, which I don't know if that was supposed to be subjective as the way that Howard is imagining he said it, or if that's the way he just really said it because he realized something's going wrong. But when I think Matt Ross and John C. Reilly are ushering a nervous breaking down, thinking of the future, whatever, mumbling Howard Hughes off to the side, like nobody can see him like this. It's a creepy ending.
I love that ending, absolutely, because it tells you everything as to where his future is going to go. Because if you know about the real Howard Hughes, I believe he died in a hotel room, being in the state he was towards the third act of the picture, with no clothes on, his fingernails grew out, he had the long beard, and yeah, he died in that state. Because I always just imagine, and yeah, he's lit in that very minimalistic way where there's only just him looking at himself in the mirror. And it ended like Raging Bull in a way where Jake LaMotta's like doing his practice boxing rounds at his own reflection. Here you have Howard Hughes battling his own reflection as well, battling his mental illness, constantly saying the way, the future, again and again and again. And then it just cuts to black. Same way with Raging Bull, cuts to black. He's going, and then bam. And his voice even echoes a little bit towards the end there. So I don't know if Scorsese was thinking about that when he put that in the picture, or if that was just something in the back of his head. Sort of like how he always has people do the Jesus pose with the camera overhead in all of his movies.
And that's something I was watching the Blu-ray, because even though I hadn't seen The Aviator in 16 years, I still bought it on Blu-ray, firmly believing that I would watch it again.
Yeah.
I noticed there's a commentary on it by Scorsese, and I was like, damn it, I wish I had planned this out better so I could listen to it, because I think that's a very good question about, what he was thinking in that at the end. What I loved is that a lot of historical dramas end with the cut to black, and then you've got the title cards explaining, Howard Hughes lived for another 30 years and they died in a hotel or whatever. Don't do that. He doesn't do that. So
thank God.
And I would have respected it if he had, but I loved at the end, it's almost like a great documentary where you're like, oh, now I got to go out and do my own research. I got to find a book on Howard Hughes or a good documentary to watch to see what happened. Because you get the sense that he is sort of incurable, especially in the time that he was living in, and his profile, like he almost couldn't afford to, like the rumors of his having gone around the bend were bad enough to almost bring him down. Like if he'd gone to, sit on someone's couch and be psychoanalyzed, A, I don't know if there was anyone qualified to really treat him in that way, and B, how long before someone squealed and it just, came out that he was a nut job. That, no disrespect to to people with OCD.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Because back then, I just wonder how horrible it must have been, because nobody knew what this stuff was back then. Probably to them, they just thought he was crazy. He couldn't explain what it was because he didn't know what it was. So that must have been your own personal nightmare, which is, I guess, why they kind of shot it that way in the movie. But it was a loving tribute to mental illness that I don't see a lot in movies. It was very delicately handled. I thought sometimes it was a little unintentionally funny, but it might have been me. They're like the scene where he's in the bathroom and his hand reaches towards the doorknob, and they just have that profile shot of his hand, his perfectly pedicured hand or manicured hand, where it's just slowly going towards the door and then it slowly backs away. I don't know why, but I started to giggle a little bit.
What I thought was funnier than that was that, because to set up, I think that was right after he cut himself on the soap.
Yeah.
Every cloth towel in the place to clean up his mess, including his bloody hand.
Yeah.
And then he realized he didn't have anything with which to grip the doorknob to open it and get out. So he ends up leaning against the bathroom wall, waiting for someone else to come in. I'm like, is the bathroom wall really, I guess it was a high-end place or something, but I'm just thinking I would not lean up against a bathroom wall for anything as an alternative to touching a door handle.
I wondered, he's worried about germs, but he's going to walk around with an open wound.
I guess he did what he had to. That's the thing, is it's interesting because he has certain defense mechanisms that his internal logic and body sort of call into play as like these 0-hour efforts to protect himself. You'll notice later on when he goes to that meeting with the senator, Senator Owen something, played by Alan Alda, who's in the pocket of Hughes's rival at Pan Am. The senator puts a thumbprint on the glass that he's going to offer to Howard Hughes, and he has him served a plate of fish with the fish head still on it, and it looks like it's practically raw. He knows he's going to freak Hughes out because he's heard the rumors. Hughes gets through that lunch, and he even kind of sticks it to him a little bit as he's walking out. But the moment he gets out into that hallway, you see him go into a full-blown panic mode. Like it was just enough to get him through that, and then he completely fell to pieces.
Yeah, that was a great detail. I love how they do kind of establish Katharine Hepburn from Ava Gardner, where I don't know why I started on that, but Hepburn, she always understood him in a way where they kind of grew up in similar backgrounds, something that they didn't cover in the movie. Because you think, if you watch this movie, you think Howard Hughes made it all on his own, and the thing is, he was brilliant at, I think, the age of 11 or 19, he built his own sort of radio, one of the first people to do it. And he was an absolute genius. Whether or not he came from a lot of money or not, it wouldn't matter. I think he would have been successful either way. But Hepburn understood him because they kind of grew up in a background where they had a lot of money, despite that one scene that I thought was kind of questionable when he calls out Hepburn's family during dinner, where he said, "You don't worry about money because you've always had it." I'm like, well, your dad had an oil company when you were a kid. He created like one of the first drill bit machines. You sold his tool company in order to pursue your career. Your uncle was a famous writer, author, and director. But having said that, I think the Hepburn and Hughes always were sort of maybe the odd ones in the family. Hepburn knew how to hide it a little more and be together with her family and know how to socialize, where Hughes was sort of a socially awkward mess.
Well, I mean, as far as that, because I did like that lunch scene with the Hepburns, and I did appreciate the fact that he called them out, because when he pulls up, they pull up in the car.
Yeah.
The entire family and their friends are sitting out on the lawn at this gorgeous estate. They're like painting and, playing instruments and just like this crazy life of leisure. They're not doing anything. They have this lunch where they're all sitting around talking in their lofty, mid-Atlantic accents, and they're joking about, oh, we're all socialists here, and Hughes recognizes that they are fabulously wealthy, but they're the worst kind of wealth. They represent intergenerational wealth, where they could literally just live off the interest of probably their great grandparents had saved, had built for them, and not have to do anything. Whereas the Hughes work ethic, or at least as presented in Howard, is being not only very smart, but also coming up with practical applications to change the world. He's saying you always, you don't appreciate money because you've always had it. Yes, he has money, but he's constantly working to improve himself. The operative word being working.
Yes, because he said some of us have work to do for a living.
Yes.
Which is the thing that they criticized him for reading the airplane manuals, but he does that for work. He's not just reading a book because it's fun.
Right. And there, I don't know the psychology of the Hepburn family, but I wonder if that could also be, in addition to whatever issues Katharine Hepburn had, perhaps as far as OCD, or they don't really get into it, but she just knows that she understands Howard Hughes on a level that other people don't. I wonder if her becoming an actress, and which involves a lot of work, a lot of struggle to acquire and maintain a career, if that attitude is like, oh, she's just going off, and why are you bothering to do all this work? You just sit on the lawn with us and paint things and not sell them.
Yeah, because to him, it's about creating and constantly doing something, not just resting on your millions upon millions of dollars. Because one thing that really made Howard Hughes stand out in this movie was, despite his enormous fortune growing up, his work ethic was enormous. I mean, this guy was constantly doing stuff, whether he be making Hell's Angels, where he's using 24 cameras and he wants 3 more, or he's building multiple airplanes that will be crashed and destroyed because that's just the way the industry goes. The guy, he reminded me of myself a lot, where I'll be in a lot of conversations, and if you were just talking about things I don't care about, it's just like I just kind of zone out. But immediately when people mention movies, I'll spring to life and start talking. That was like him when they would talk about airplanes. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Well, no, and that lunch scene embodies exactly what you're talking about, because he's very nervous and twitchy and kind of picking up on a lot of the fact that the Hepburn family is talking about a lot of nonsense.
Yeah.
But when someone asks him about his airplane, he gets really excited about it. For the 10 seconds he's allowed to discuss it, and then everyone else starts talking over him and, kind of ignoring him. That's when he sort of snaps. So yeah, I'm kind of the same way. And unfortunately, I try and stay interested and engaged in whatever people are talking about, but movies definitely are my trigger as well. It's like, did someone say cinema?
Yes, exactly. No, one of the worst triggers I ever had was, and it's similar to when they cut him off. They compared him building an airplane to like a birdhouse. They're like, oh, Jeffrey built a birdhouse once and it was great. It's just like, fuck you. This isn't a fucking birdhouse. I remember I was talking to an aunt of mine way back, and she said, oh, I just saw Iron Man 2. It was really a great film. And I just wanted to go, what the fuck? Why? Because whenever my family asks me what I think of a movie, I'll start telling them what I thought of it, why I didn't like it. And I could just see on their face just how disinterested they are, because I'm going so far into detail with it, which is how I think they felt when Hughes was trying to, he finally found something where he's like, I could connect to these people. I could talk about something I'm passionate about. And immediately when he does, they deflect it. And it's like, oh, you're just one of those fake people. I see.
Well, it's because he, despite the conversation he has with John C. Reilly at the beginning of the film, when he kind of hires him to be his, manage a lot of the meat and potatoes of his business, he claims that Howard Hughes does, that he's a vision guy. He's a big picture guy, and he needs someone else to take care of all the small details. But as we see throughout the film, he's constantly sketching and looking at blueprints and coming up with formulas. I mean, he draws a diagram, like a physics diagram of a brazier, for Christ's sake, to bring to get a point across. So I think his version of the small details, anything having to do with the business, when it comes to, there's like the big picture vision, there's the medium picture vision of like, okay, here's how we can accomplish my dream. And then the lower level stuff is like, okay, you go and execute this, you go and build these, prototypes with the rivets. I'll just come run my hand along the side of it, which is very important because he was obsessive about quality control. But there was just, I think his wealth and his ambition and his smarts afforded him the luxury of not having to worry about how to, liquidate a company or mortgage a company, or to come up with the $18 million he needed to finish some project. That was all John C. Reilly stuff, and Hughes wasn't interested. That's why he's constantly saying, just go make it happen. Just do it for me.
Just do your magic, essentially. Yes, I love the humor in that movie, too. There's so many jokes that really land well when he's talking to John C. Reilly, and he says, I want to reshoot this entire film, and I want to do it with sound. And already, this is a movie they shot with a budget that's equivalent to $60 million today, right? But back then, that was a huge deal. It was like $3 million. And
over the course of, I think, 3 or 4 years, right? That was
it was an enormous project. He said, well, how much of the movie do you want to shoot? And he goes, or reshoot, I should say. How much of it do you want to reshoot? All of it. Do we have that kind of money? There's a little pause. No. Like I was just cracking up during that scene. I love it. There's so many great little moments like that where this guy, he has these insane ideas, but he knows what he's doing in the end.
I think he believes what he's doing, and that gets him very far. Whether or not he actually knows
Yeah,
what he's doing, that's where it gets kind of complicated.
that's true. That's
because
true.
he does get in his own way, and part of that I think is the OCD,
Yeah.
because and it's a fascinating question. I don't know if anyone's done a psychological profile on Howard Hughes, but would he have accomplished as much as he had in his life if he hadn't had that, personal obstacle that he had to overcome? Was there anything in even those episodes where he was spending time holed up in his personal movie theater peeing into, milk jars, that fueled or gave inspiration to something that would allow him to push through and finish the Spruce Goose?
Right. I feel that way with sometimes my my mental hangups, because I think I'm gonna prove everyone wrong. And I think that was sort of his drive when he went to Congress. And he started out awkward in the hearings before the Senate because he was pouring, I think, about $56 million into his own aircraft, none of which any of those planes have taken off. Yet various other aircraft carriers lost hundreds of millions of American taxpayer dollars in their aircraft, and he called them out on it. And really, that wasn't supposed to be a hearing where he was going to grill the senator, but that's what he turned it to in the end. In the beginning, everybody kind of saw his little strange nuances. They asked him to produce his business partner. He doesn't understand what the word produce means. He doesn't want to produce him forward. So that doesn't happen. He has various other sort of awkward little ticks and moments, but in the end, he gets the upper hand. And it was his way of showing them, yeah, I have this thing. You all know it. But guess what? I'm going to show you what I'm capable of. And I thought that was a brilliant moment of victory for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's odd, but it sort of reminded me of the climax of the movie Speed Racer, where Speed Racer has been completely thrown off the track, and he's literally at the bottom of this spiral part of the track. Like, he's at the very lowest point he could be mentally and physically in terms of finishing the big race. But then he gets this moment of inspiration. He starts spiraling up and thinking about everything he's achieved and everything he's going to achieve. And that gives him the momentum to push through and say, screw you guys. This is my thing. And half of you people wouldn't, be doing what you're doing if it wasn't for something that I'd already done. Mm-hmm. One of the things I thought about is the context in which this movie was released. I mean, it's 2004. So we are heavy into the Bush administration, rounding I think, the election already happened by then. So we were going into the second term.
Yeah.
But at that time, there was a lot of talk about corruption in business, like with Halliburton and what was it, Blackwater before they became Z. And that's something that it's touched on in this movie, partially embodied by not only Alan Alda, but the great Alec Baldwin, who absolutely kills it in the 20 minutes or so of screen time, just representing Hughes's main competition, but also a guy who will do anything. He'll buy anybody, any politician, in order to get the upper hand over his opponent and literally try and take over the world. So it felt timely then. It still feels timely now because, I mean, corruption never really goes away. It recedes and then it comes back stronger than ever, usually in the guise of something else.
Yeah, he definitely plays the great corporate evil Mongol who's always scheming. He's like Mr. Potter in a way from Wonderful Life.
Well, I would say the difference, it's a good comparison. Certainly, he's got the heart of a Mr. Potter, but he's got the demeanor of someone who you kind of want to hang out with.
Yeah.
He can be polite at cocktail parties. He's also very cool. I mean, even though he's doing something utterly reprehensible, when he's sitting there talking to Howard Hughes through the door and blowing cigar smoke through the keyhole and having this wonderful conversation about how exactly, it's like a Bond villain speech. He's laying out how exactly he's going to destroy Howard Hughes. It's such a cool moment. You're like, God, I wish I was an evil genius like Alec Baldwin in this movie.
Yeah, it was great when Alec Baldwin's finally defeated too.
Well, we don't really get that moment, right? I think
kind of when he's talking to everybody after the Senate hearings, and then he says that TWA will become the airline industry.
That's
And
right.
he's not going to have his grand scheme, and he just kind of holds the globe. And it's a PG-13 film, so they let out the first F word, and he just goes, "Fuck," and kind of lets go of his sort of calm, cool demeanor persona for just a little bit for a second.
Yeah, but even when he delivers that F-bomb, it's still he's not like screaming and knocking. I
No.
was fully expecting, and I hadn't seen the movie in a long time, so
Like
I
a
forgot
Citizen
how
Kane
that's.
tearing the room
I thought he was
apart
gonna.
moment.
I thought he was gonna pick the globe up and throw it at the executives across the room.
Have a Steve Jobs meltdown. Yeah. No, I'm glad it was just subtle.
Yeah.
He probably did that later when he was home or something like that. Yeah. I did, but the great thing they did establishing between Hepburn and Gardner, to piggyback on that a little bit, just go there, is Hepburn knew sort of the idea of putting on a performance in front of people and how Howard was different in privacy, just like how she was different privately. But Ava Gardner was great at knowing how to nurse Howard Hughes, how to stand up to him, and how to challenge him. So when he needed to get dressed up for Congress, I love that little scene where she's actually sort of rehabilitating him in a way. She's showing him. There's that great line when he's washing the sink, and you have that close up of all the soap sort of smothered together, and it's all. Ugh. And he says, "Does that look clean to you?" She says, "Well, the world isn't clean, Howard, but we do our best." And that's a great sort of motivator that gets him to put the soap back on his face and get himself back together. And she's saying, "Hey, I'm going to be calm. I'm going to be polite. I'm not going to scream at you and, smack you in the face like she did earlier. But I'm going to be a little strict and say, you need to pick yourself up, but I love you." And I just thought that was great. They established these movie stars beyond what we know of them as stars. We got to know them as people a little bit. And I just thought that was a fantastic sort of way of distinguishing the two women.
It is, and I think I was maybe a bit harsh on Kate Beckinsale. I think she's fine in this movie. I think the script does a lot of the heavy lifting that she doesn't in her performance, and part of that might just be her limited screen time. We don't spend as much time with her as a character as we do with Katharine Hepburn. But I like what you were talking about as far as what people see of celebrities, because the first hand washing scene that we see when Hughes is alone in a public bathroom is at this gala of some kind, and there's a guy who comes ambling out of one of the toilet stalls. I think he has two canes, and he hobbles over to the sink next to Hughes, and he's like, "Can you hand me one of those towels over there?" And Howard Hughes is like, I can't." Then the guy kind of moves around him and gets the towel, and Hughes is very visibly like freaked out. What must that guy have thought about the great Howard Hughes? Because he knew who he was, and he could probably just leave the bathroom and say, "Oh, that guy is an asshole. He's so stuck up. He wouldn't even hand me a paper towel," not understanding that there was a lot more going on in his brain. So you think about, and it's magnified even now, today's day and age, with celebrity culture, the internet, tabloid, news and entertainment reporting. We think we know about someone because of something we see in a headline, or we see a tweet, or we see a clip of them taken in whatever context, and we're like, "Oh, that guy's a dirtbag," or "That gal is great." We don't have any idea what the truth is.
Yeah, it treated everyone sort of like a person. I thought this is also one of Leonardo DiCaprio's best performances.
How the hell did he not get an out? Do you know off the top of your head who won in 2005? It would have been for 2004.
Jamie Foxx or Ray. Yeah, which
take that away from me.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what I always thought about Jamie Foxx and Ray. He's great at doing an impression of Ray, right? He's great at bobbling his head around, going, "Yeah, okay," but outside of the uncanny sort of resemblance, he doesn't really get what's inside of Ray Charles' head. Where DiCaprio in this movie, you get what's going on inside of Howard Hughes' head. He doesn't look like Howard Hughes. He doesn't sound like Howard Hughes, but you understand Howard Hughes through his performance, and you understand mentally what he's going through. I mean, a lot of that is thanks to John Logan's screenplay and Martin Scorsese's direction. But this was a role that really kind of fit DiCaprio well in this film of this young and completely insecure genius. And sort of that frail voice of his lends favor to that in a certain way, where I thought there was far more layers to Leonardo DiCaprio's Howard Hughes than there was to Jamie Foxx's Ray Charles, which may be a controversial uh, viewpoint, but I stand by it.
Well, and who knows what gets into the Academy members' heads when they're voting for these things, but this is one of those movies, and I guess this happens almost every time I see a Leo DiCaprio movie. I wonder, is he not more appreciated or respected as an actor because of the whole Titanic thing? Because even this movie is only 7 years on from that, when he was the star of the biggest block history. He was on the cover of like teen magazines and stuff, but he was also, I don't know. I feel like he's constantly trying to prove himself, and didn't he win for The Revenant?
Yeah.
Is that what finally put him over the top?
Yeah.
Again, I guess I'll give it to him, but I feel like movies like this are a better example of what he can really do.
Yeah, that's more like, this movie's more about acting. Revenant's more about what he actually went through. This is Leonardo DiCaprio in The Revenant saying, I went through a forest and I ate a raw bison. For God's sakes, just give me the fucking Oscar already. I had to deal with Alejandro Gonzalez Inarritu, which I've heard from people, woohoo, you don't want to work for him. So, yeah.
Is it just like a real taskmaster kind of a guy, or?
To directly quote my friend, he's a prick. Yeah.
That sucks.
I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but she's very adamant that through her father, who works in the industry, that he hates him.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Well, we'll have to talk more about that off mic.
Yeah. Mr. Inarritu, if you still want to do an interview with me, I don't represent what she said. I don't know if it's true.
Well, he's not going to do it because he's a prick.
No, well, hey, Birdman's
allegedly.
Birdman's one of my favorite movies in the last 10 years. Yeah.
Thank you. That whole Birdman versus Boyhood controversy just drove me crazy. I loved both those movies. I love Birdman more, and I've seen that the most. I think I've seen that like 6 times, and I think 3 of those were in the theater.
Yeah, you had to see that movie in the theater.
Yeah.
You have to see it in the theater about the theater.
Well, I was thinking about that watching The Aviator too. I don't know if it's just something that is a blind spot for me, but I am a sucker for movies, as they say, about movies, or just about stagecraft or putting art together. I just love them. And I'm trying to think of examples of bad movies in that vein that I've seen. None come to mind. I'm happy for someone to shout one out and be like, oh yeah, that did suck. But there's something about it getting beyond like the idea of it being a navel gazing exercise, but really getting into the people who put these things together, what they're like. They're trying to create something that will hopefully inspire other, mass audiences. There's something really beautiful about that. And even though The Aviator is also about other things, it's about making movies, and I really dig it.
Yeah, well, the filmmakers, whenever they make something about making a movie, there's endless inspiration to draw from, because you're literally standing in the inspiration. So it's easy to sort of adapt that in a way. I would love to do a reality show about a guy who just works on sets, just to show people what it's really like to work on a set, because everyone has this romanticized idea of it. Yeah, sometimes there's fantastic days, but a lot of it's just meticulous. Unless you're the director, you're just sitting around a lot, just waiting.
Yeah, I've only been on a couple of sets, and they were for smaller things, but yeah, there is a lot of waiting and setup. But depending on the actual environment, and I think your enthusiasm and experience for it, I mean, I found that even just sitting around waiting for things to happen, I still had that thought, I'm on a movie set. This is
Yeah.
so cool.
Oh yeah. Oh God, yeah. First set I was ever on was the Weatherman with Nicolas Cage. I was
Oh,
yeah. It was a little high school trip through my telecommunications class, and I snuck up to the front. I wasn't supposed to be in the front. It was a Navy Fury dressed up as Abraham Lincoln in the scene and had like a beard on. I think in the subsequent scene in the end film, he was like banging some girl from there later on. But
as
uh,
Abraham Lincoln.
I think actually, yeah, in the scene he was. I
Okay.
can't remember.
Did he
Uh,
did she walk in and he had the tall hat like not on his head?
I'm not sure. It was so long ago since I saw that movie. Um, I just remember his stand-in was there for a while, and then he came in for a few minutes and left, and we didn't stay on set the whole time. You know, like the first set I was on, like for the whole day, it was probably some low-budget thing, and then I did the Transformers films and stuff like that. Uh, but some of my friends got to work on Dark Knight and stuff like that, which I'm jealous of. I tried to get on Batman Begins in 2005, but yeah,
I knew Yeah, I knew a couple of people I think were extras on the Dark Knight. They said it was really cool. One of them was actually in the big crowd scene with Heath Ledger and it was the funeral scene.
yeah, the parade, yeah.
Parade, yeah. So that was pretty sounded pretty fun.
Yeah. So outside of getting detracted from our own personal movie experiences, um, yes, The Aviator, I would say this is a great representation of mental health. It's a great representation of American ingenuity and passion and drive. This is one of my more favorite biopics because it's not a by the book sort of film. You really that it earns its almost 3 hour length
Oh yeah.
because you really feel like you get to take your time with these people and understand them, and it's not like a highlight reel sort of film where it's just going over all the big sort of moments of someone's life and just recreating them for the picture. It actually examines somebody and examines some aspects of someone that maybe a lot of biopics don't do. And it's one of my more favorite representations of mental illness that's put on screen with a lot of care and subtlety and concentration that a cinephile like Scorsese would know how to put in.
Well, I think that's a great point, is because one of the things that struck me, uh, I was watching this on my television. It's a big screen, but I mean it's not. It's an
Yeah.
OLED TV, so people probably would think it's practically the size of a computer monitor by now. One of the things I really noticed was, even though it was a smaller screen than Cineplex, Scorsese knows how to shoot the hell out of stuff to make it feel like you're watching it in a movie theater. The
Yeah.
Hell's Angels premiere, uh,
Oh yeah.
they had to recreate all of that from the giant marquee, and I think they had like planes and stuff and the big red carpets. It looked like it had thousands of extras. I don't know how much, if any of this was created digitally, but you get the feeling that Scorsese, you could almost imagine him as a Howard Hughes type person who's just obsessed with getting everything right and getting the vision that's in his head for recreating that time period onto the big screen. It's like, no, this has to be this way because we have to make people believe. And he made a believer out of me. But yeah, it's a gorgeous film, a lot of great production value. It's totally immersive, and
Yeah.
it also got me thinking about history, because I don't know how much of it was true, how much of it was embellished, but
Yeah.
you look at how much Howard Hughes was involved in intercontinental travel, in like creating different military aircraft, like the troop and vehicle transports,
Yeah.
that kind of stuff. He's like drawing sketches on the back of a piece of paper, like, oh yeah, this is going to be the future of the military.
Yeah.
So, like I said earlier, it invites you to go back and just like explore history and find out even more, because we tend to think of history as just events done by groups of people or companies or governments, but there are people who come up with these ideas, and getting to know who those people were and what was going on in their lives when they made these things happen, it's fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. The only thing that looked bad in the movie was the CGI. That was
Well, it doesn't hold up. It's not
yeah.
as bad as some of like the Star Wars prequels CGI.
Hmm.
and I don't know how much of that was. I don't remember it sticking out when I saw it in 2004. I think I might have registered that it's, there's no way that they shot this. There wasn't an actual dogfight with Leo DiCaprio thousands of feet in the air.
Yeah.
But it looks worse now than it did then. But it's still, if you suspend that disbelief for just a few minutes, you'll get through it.
Of course, for Nolan directed it, he'd actually have him doing a real dogfight in the air. No, he wouldn't. Let's do it for real, although you can't see anything. No, he actually finally mastered it. If you look at the action from Batman Begins compared to Dark Knight, it's like day and night.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Or day and night with a K in the front of it.
No, Night and Day was a Tom Cruise, Cameron Diaz movie from 10 years ago.
Oh, gosh. Cameron Diaz, who was also in a movie that Martin Scorsese directed called Gangs of New York. Now I'm just turning into that section from IMDb where you're like, this actor was in this, and they were in that. Like, yeah, we know. They all work together. Well, I think that's all I had to say on The Aviator. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I'm sorry, you broke up. Were you speaking?
Oh, no, I was going to say I'd forgotten that connection about... Oh, yeah. I was saying I'd forgotten that connection about Cameron Diaz and Gangs of New York.
Yeah. That movie, I have mixed feelings about it. Some of it I love. Some of it I'm like, specifically Cameron Diaz and DiCaprio aren't that believable in that movie.
I still have never seen Gangs of New York. That's one of my Scorsese blind spots I got to fix.
Oh, yeah. See, Scorsese, he makes a lot of movies outside of, not talking about Gangs of New York, but talking about Aviator. He makes a lot of movies that are not just mob or crime films. He makes a lot of musical documentaries. He makes a lot of films about religion. He makes the only movies about religion that I like. The Last Temptation of Christ is the only Jesus movie that I like because it's a film that examines what would it be like if you were Jesus? What flaws would you have? What mistakes would you make? And they examine him like a human being, not this person who's greater than everyone and knows what he has to sacrifice. And it's not a blood fest like the Passion of the Christ was. And then
I got to push back on you because Last Temptation of Christ was really inaccurate.
No, it's not supposed to be accurate.
Well, no, I'm saying I was there,
yeah.
And my last days on Earth were nothing like that.
Yeah,
it's all lies.
Yeah, I didn't have a guardian angel to save me, and then I decided to be crucified again. Okay, and then of course Silence. Oh my God, that's a movie that's so difficult to watch. But my God, talk about a movie that really is about what it feels like to break from your faith. And of course, with his religious background, there's some personal aspects to it, despite Andrew Garfield's ridiculous accent in the movie.
Yeah, that was a bit of a challenge. But Silence was, I want to say I loved that movie. It was a hard experience to see, but I did get to see it in a theater, which is, and people don't talk about that movie. Maybe it's because it's so, rough. But for folks out there, if you haven't taken the time, definitely watch it.
Yeah. He's a man of more than just the crime films. But thank you for coming on. Go check out The Aviator. If you want to check out Ian, go to Kickseat or kickingtheseat.com.
Kickseat.com.
Kickseat.com. I just have a link, so I just click on it and I just attach it in the description.
It's all right.
So go check out kickseat.com for all of his stuff, for all of his content, and also go on his YouTube channel as well. Just type in Kicking the Seat in the search bar. It'll pop right up in there. And if you want to check me out, check out YPA Reviews. The YPA stands for You'll Probably Agree. If you type in either of them, you'll see my website, you'll see my YouTube show, see all that stuff. Use Google, not Bing or Yahoo search engines that try to spam my computer.
Is that a thing?
It happened recently. Like somehow Yahoo search engine got stuck on all my browsers, and I have to take it to a computer store to get it off of there.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, that sucks. Well, thank you for having me on again. This is it's always fun. And The Aviator, I'm glad we revisited it because it's a film that I don't know why I haven't seen it more times.
Yeah. the movie really did see the way of the future when it came to our own quarantine. Yeah.
Dude, I had forgotten about that opening. When it opens and that's the first thing you hear, I was like, oh my God.
Yeah. I don't know if his mom was really like that, but yeah. I can see why they didn't go over his past. So if you saw the enormous wealth he came from, people would go, oh, whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah. Yeah. So yeah, thanks a lot for coming on, and we will see you later.
The way of the future. The way of the future. The way of the future.